Hi, Storytellers. Welcome to the Storyteller Show podcast, season 2026. Today, we are excited to welcome Rachael Welsh. Rachael, thank you so much for joining us today. To start, could you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Rachael Welsh. I am a school librarian. So I have been a librarian in an elementary school and a high school, and now I'm at a middle school. So I like to tell my students that I'm collecting all of the grade levels like infinity stones. I'm just, got to catch them all. I've been at every level, and I just love sharing literature with our youth.
As a librarian in a bilingual Spanish-English school environment, what trends are you seeing in what students and teachers are requesting? We're Teresa and Jackie from the Storyteller Shelf Foundation, home of the Storyteller Shelf podcast and the Big Bang Notable Book Award, and we have something special to share. We're getting ready for our upcoming Marketing Mastery Summit, and we're excited about this event. This event was created for authors, illustrators, and publishing professionals who want real marketing insight, practical tools, and encouragement for the publishing industry. Click the link below to get your tickets today.
My school is really, really cool. We have 3 different programs, and one of them is dual language. And it's a fun program because it's not just ESL students, English as a second language, but it's students that their parents have chosen to put them into this program. So they start in kindergarten and they go up through 8th grade, where the teachers and the students are speaking both English and Spanish. Because of that, I have curated quite a large Spanish language section for my library. And any kid can get it because, not just the kids in dual language speak Spanish. And it's interesting the things they love learning in our area. So I'm south of Houston. So we do have a very large Hispanic population. And they love learning about themselves. They love biographies, they love history, and they love the authentic characters in fiction books that represent themselves. I do have a lot of requests for, translations of some of the popular ones. Like, I do have translations of Percy Jackson because those are super popular. But for the most part, yeah, they want biographies of their important Hispanic figures like Messi. I cannot keep a Lionel Messi book on the shelf. Lots of Selena biographies, Selena Quintanilla. I do try to get a bunch of books that are the same book in English and Spanish so that they can read however they want to and still see themselves in the library.
Actually, that goes into my next question because you're talking about building your library. So what do you look for when you're building your collection as far as what books do you look for Spanish, English language type books?
So when I came into the school, I noticed that most of my Spanish language books were translations. And then speaking with a lot of Latina librarians, I have a lot of really great librarian friends in the Rio Grande Valley. So I spoke with them and was ask them like, what titles do we need? What authors do we need? Because they have commented too, and some of my dual language teachers have commented that the translations aren't always the best, especially when you're translating from English to Spanish and it's not an authentic, Hispanic story. So I've tried to really get some of those more authentic voices. So the authors that come from a Hispanic background or speak Spanish themselves, that they have had, I try to do a little bit of research on some of the translations, or that they are a Spanish speaker themselves, the authors, and have had more of a hand in that translation, because that's what they need. And if the kids are learning Spanish and they're reading things that don't necessarily make sense or aren't necessarily, in the best way, the best language usage, then that's not helping them either understand the story or to understand the language. So I try to do some research on where exactly these books are coming from and to make sure that the collection isn't just full of, Diary of a Wimpy Kid translated into Spanish. Try to get some more that are a little bit more authentic in the translations and make sure that they are correct.
It's wonderful that librarians are looking to try to help match the voices for the readers. And when you're talking about that, can you go a little more into that? When you're looking for the books itself, you said that you try to choose authors that are of that similar background. You mentioned that you talked to librarians in the Rio Grande Valley. How do you find that as far as like catalog? Like, just a deep dive, like Google search? Like, how do you do that?
The Latino and Latina diaspora is huge, which we don't really always think of, especially in Texas. A lot of the Hispanic American education is Mexican only. And that's kind of the idea. But there's different nuances in Spanish language from different places. I have a teacher that is a dual language teacher who is from El Salvador. We have a teacher from Colombia, a teacher from Cuba, so that have these backgrounds. Whenever, it's really easy to just put everything in one, like, oh, it's Hispanic, it's Spanish, in just that one bubble. And, just that one label of like, oh, well, it's Spanish, it's fine. Well, no, just because they speak Spanish doesn't mean they're all from the same place. And it doesn't mean that they all speak the same language and have the same backgrounds. Like, their countries are so diverse and so, colorful, for lack of a better word. Like, their histories are so rich and diverse that you have to honor that. And so going and looking at the plots, looking at where the author, so just looking at the author backgrounds, where are you from? Like, what stories are you telling? Is your character, Dominican? Is your character Puerto Rican? Having those representations, as well as having the Mexican, we want to keep those too, but having all of them around and having that representation that people can see themselves is very important. So the research is kind of easy, especially with the internet and, a lot. So I'll just look at the authors' backgrounds and their biographies. A lot of the times their plots will say, like, if the characters, if they are writing from, their authentic, like, character representation, it will say so-and-so Dominican American or so-and-so, immigrated from Cuba. It will say it in the plot, but you have to be aware and you have to, that you're looking for that, Hispanic doesn't mean the same thing across the board.
Yes, I definitely agree on that. We are a Mexican American family, but as far as a podcast, we are multicultural in our podcast, so we like to have that representation.
I didn't realize that there were so many nuances based on, where they were from. I was trying to get something translated to send home. So I go to some of my teachers when I'm doing translations to make sure that everything is correct, because Google Translate is not always the most accurate. So I'll always double check with my teachers. And it's so funny because they will send me to different teachers to make sure, because even they all speak Spanish, but they all have different ways of saying things. So like they will tell me, oh, go check with this, I think this is right, but go check with this person just to double check. It's so interesting to me. It was so cool to learn, like those nuances in language, which makes sense when you think about it. We have so many different ways of saying things regionally just in America and, between all the English speaking countries. So it makes sense, but I just hadn't really thought about it. It was really cool to kind of realize.
Yeah, we could probably go on a long topic about that because we say different things and it is so fun. And it's great because it brings people together in that sense, learning about, oh, well, this is how we say something here or there. I like that you are bringing that connection with the kind of books that you are bringing into the library. But going into types of books that kids like and enjoy, that's the best part, right? What genres or topics are kids gravitating right now?
I have at least one kid every period, because I have classes all day. So at least every class time, somebody comes in asking for a scary book, a spooky book, which I'm always like, well, what do you find scary? Because it's different for every person. So scary is really big. Fantasy was really big a couple years ago, but I don't really see that as much with middle grade this year. It's a lot of spooky and then a lot of humor. They still really like the things that will make them laugh. My students, so I have 5th and 6th graders, so they're getting more into their teenage years, especially the girls want things with some drama. So we have a lot of those books that have like relationship dramas, which I always explain to them, like, well, friendships are relationships too. Yeah, so relationship drama, family drama, realistic fiction is really big. And my students are starting to get into historical fiction now, which is really fun. World War II is a big one. And then historical fiction for, just kind of across the board. Like I can kind of sell them on anything because a lot of our historical fictions also have a lot of action in them, which is really good for getting their attention when they're this age.
Yes. I see that there is a big shift in like what you're saying. I'm guessing that those spooky stories are part of that is Goosebumps, because it seems like that is the...
I grew up with R.L. Stine. I will love him until the day I die. Yeah, I was a Goosebumps kid and then turned into a Fear Street teenager and, still go back and reread them. So yeah, I still have a lot of the Goosebumps. Mary Downing Hahn is still really big. It's fun because these kids are so just into any sort of good story. So I can still sell them on books that are older, air quotes, older. So the books that I loved as a kid are still good stories because stories are universal and they are timeless. So my favorite book when I was a kid was Wait Till Helen Comes by Mary Downing Hahn. And that one is always like one of my highest checkouts because it is such a good ghost story, and it has the family elements that they can still relate to. It's just a masterclass in story. Gosh, I love her so much. It's so good. But I have all of those, and book publishers are really good about just like recovering them. So they'll have more, like the Babysitter's Club books are now turning into graphic novels. So anything with like an updated cover, they, will still go for, even if it was written 40 years ago. And, the characters don't have cell phones. But yeah, anything that is just a good story, they will go for. It doesn't matter if it's contemporary or not.
That's good to know, and also from an author's perspective on what kids are leaning towards. Now, for authors who want their books to be considered for a library, what are a few practical steps that actually work to introduce their book? What information do they need to bring, or what can they learn from you in order to have their book be considered in a library?
I have 5th and 6th graders, it's such a fun age because they're still young enough to be like excited and passionate about things, but old enough to really understand like sarcasm. You get to see them kind of becoming like little people. And this is probably going to break a lot of hearts, but it is a really difficult to sell a book if it is over, I would say, like 250 pages. So those really long tomes, and I will say I do have students that will read, like the huge tomes, like Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger, I believe. Amazing. And I have kids that are diehard devoted fans, but there are not a lot of kids that will gravitate towards that just because read with their eyes first, like they read on the shelf first. So if they're seeing something that is, like a good 4 inches across, a lot of kids will just immediately like not go for it, which again, I know like we all have, like we want to tell the story and like sometimes but yeah, anything that is concise, that is quick. And when I say quick, like quick to grab, my more recent example is New Dragon City by Mary Mancusi, which is a science fiction fantasy. Within the first 2 pages, there's a dragon attack. So I can immediately get kids in that don't necessarily like science fiction or fantasy because like the action starts immediately. So a lot of these kids, you have to think about what they're doing when they're not reading. So a lot of the kids are scrolling. They have curated their lives. So if they come across something that they don't like on their feed, they can just scroll past it. And it's difficult to get them to stick with something that they don't like. Now I'm getting into my kind of like teacher mode. This is one of the things that I talk about at some of our professional developments is we have to kind of think of like where the kids, they are not used to having to sit in discomfort and having to sit in boredom. Because if they don't like something, they just like scroll right past it. They have perfectly curated their entertainment. Same with like television. If they don't like a show, back in our day, you'd have to like sit through commercials. You'd have to sit through whatever. And with streaming, if they don't like, it's completely action packed. There's no stopping. If they don't like something, there's immediately another show that they can go to, as opposed to, back in our day, you'd have to wait a full 30 minutes for the next show to come on. So catching them early on is really, really important because that will kind of hook them. It's much easier to get them to check out a book and to try something if within the first few pages, they're immediately engrossed in action or drama.
Okay, Rachel, we have a lot of people here listening who are authors, and they really, really, really want to come into the school to do an author visit and talk about their book. Can you tell us, as a librarian, what are the steps that they need to take in order to do that?
We love author visits. My kids love virtual author visits, which I think is a really great alternative to bringing an author in because I feel like they feel a little bit more special with a virtual author visit. I usually do those with like a smaller group and they get to talk with them, as opposed to when I have an in-person visit, it's everybody all together and they don't necessarily kind of like get that, one-on-one time. And then similarly, everybody is excited about it. Not everybody wants to be there. And so there's always like lots of noises. I would say whatever presentation you have, again, just kind of making sure that it's engaging, that it's something that they're going to, be cool with sitting through. And then, yeah, just anything that you can do. I love the authors that show pictures of themselves at their age. The kids always really love that. We had an author come in and he had a story about his childhood. I think it was Owen Colfer who came in and he was talking about he grew up with I think 5 or 6 brothers, and they were all in the back of the car, and one of the brothers got left, and it was the youngest brother got left at the gas station, and they didn't tell their parents. And so by the time they got home, when they got home, they were like, where's the brother? And my students, the only question, he had talked about his books, had talked about his new book. The only questions at the very end, the only questions they had was about did you guys get in trouble? What happened to him? Was he mad at y'all? How long did it take you to go back and get the only questions were about the family stories that they told. So anything that can kind of relate to them is definitely a key to getting them engaged. Yeah, I think it's fun. I love a virtual visit, and I have had several authors. We did my bilingual book club. We did Hands by Tori Maldonado, and I posted about it on our Instagram, not really thinking anything, and I tagged him because, social media. And he responded and said he's like, I can do a 15-minute Zoom with you. And it was great. And the kids were so excited. They felt so special. But yeah, he was like, anything you want to ask is great. He told, stories. And we had done, as part of our club, we always try to do something, related to the book. So I had them do a YouTube boxing class. So they were able to talk to him about boxing because that's what he did when he was a kid. So, again, virtual is great. So I would recommend that. If you are able to do virtual, then I love a virtual visit, but that's just me.
What's the etiquette here for authors? Should they reach out directly to librarians, or should they contact other people in the school first?
I would recommend reaching out to librarians because we are able to know if that would be a good fit for the school and for the students. I will say it is difficult to have an author visit if the kids don't know what the books are or have no kind of. It's not necessarily a name recognition of the author because a lot of the kids don't know the author's name as well as they should. If they aren't familiar with the book, or if it's not a super popular genre, if they're like, I write Westerns, I'm like, that's great. And not for me. Thank you so much. But yeah, definitely reaching out to the librarian because then they will know who to contact for, the different space needs and calendar needs and all that.
Okay, so we reach out to the librarian. And do you have any tips on when to do that? Should there be a certain month that they reach out, or a month that they should avoid because you're very busy?
Spring is so hard. I would recommend, honestly, August, September, because that is when we get our budgets open. And that is when kind of the calendar is a lot more clear. We're starting to put things together. And spring is testing season, especially, I'm sure it's the same in all states, but in Texas, tests are just So many, so many. And especially if you're a young adult author and you're getting into, SAT testing and PSAT testing and TSI testing and AP testing, and as well as the state tests, like it's just nonstop. So I would definitely avoid, plus we have to have our budgets spent by then. So I would definitely recommend, like in August, September, reaching out for sure. Or if you are going into spring, if you're reaching out in spring, just know that it will be for the next school year, which is also great because then we can kind of plan the calendar early. If you're a planner like me, I constantly have, calendars and agendas and schedules and stuff going. I think we had Angela Cervantes come this year in October. And I had reached out to her that previous March. And we started because she wrote The Cursed Moon, which is this amazing spooky book. And October is Hispanic Heritage Month, or the first part of October is Hispanic Heritage Month. So I was like, okay, spooky October, Hispanic October. So I knew that I wanted to get on her calendar. So I reached out and started that process like in March of the year before.
So, as a librarian and from all of your experience working with kids up until now, what do you think that publishers are misunderstanding about how a kid discovers a book in a library?
As much as we like to say you can't judge a book by its cover, that is very wrong. Again, they judge with their eyes first, which I know, like, of course you read with your eyes. That's why I love that a lot of the older books are being reissued with new covers that are a little bit more engaging and colorful and bright. Unfortunately, covers do matter. Again, length matters. It's a really hard sell for a 500-page book. Even if it is the most amazing story in the world, it's difficult, especially for those reluctant readers. I have so many reluctant readers that even if it's, I'm doing my best, tap dance and my, tip in the hat and doing the little, shuffle, and they just will not go for it if it's overly large. But yeah, those are kind of the things that I see is it can be the best story in the world and it is a difficult sell if it's not something that looks appealing to them.
I was wondering if you might be willing to kind of put together maybe a list of, I don't know, like 5 or 10 titles that your kids are just grabbing for, and maybe we can share it with some like covers that are working.
My kids love any Stuart Gibbs book. Spy School is huge. Space Case is huge. Oh gosh, what's the other one? The animal ones, because they're all bright colors and they have kind of like, I actually have one. So it's bright and it's, the new Babysitters Club graphic novels my girls love. What else? They love any of the Rick Riordan, both the ones that he's written as well as any of his imprint. If anyone doesn't know, so Rick Riordan is the GOAT of middle grade fantasy. And he started with Greek mythology and then, some Roman. He wrote, I think, Egyptian, Norse. But then people were asking him to tap into other mythologies and other cultures. And he was like, cool, that's not something that I am the most knowledgeable about. Under his imprint, Rick Riordan Presents, he has gotten authors of those cultures to write. So I know J.C. Cervantes has, I think, like Mayan, I want to say. Tahia K. Or Taylor K. Mejia has Mexican, which is like, she's got like the La Llorona, the Palo Santo. Oh, so good. And the River of Tears. Oh, blah, 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 blah. The Are You Shaw series, like there's just Dragon Pearl is just so good. And so those are, again, very colorful. Gosh, what else? Oh, my girls love Dork Diaries, which again, very bright colors. Last Kids on Earth, they do a lot of that. Dogman is huge, which I'm like, haven't you read that one? They're like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, okay. Let me think. And again, anything, the new Mary Downing Hahn ones have like, there's one called The Puppets Playback that every time I see it, I just like cringe because it's this super scary puppet toy thing. The kids love it. It's horrifying. As well as, I think is it K.R. Alexander is another one that has super scary books, which Lindsay Curry has some really great covers that are super spooky. Oh, Allie Russell has the Mystery James one is so spooky and the kids love it. The kids love it. It's like this vampire ghost looking thing on the front. I'm like, doesn't that look scary? And they're like, yeah. Doesn't it just? So good.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our storytellers, either about your job or the kids that you work with or publishing in general?
Don't let people tell you that kids are not reading. Kids are reading. I have kids in the library all day long. They are so thirsty for stories. They just love anything that they can share with each other and will, give them a good something to talk about. They love recommending books to each other. The oral tradition of storytelling has not left us because they are telling each other about their books. I have kids writing reviews. I have a big poster with Post-it notes next to it that I call it my lazy book club. So they get to write their reviews and put it on the poster. So that way when kids come in, because, the kids are always ask, have you read every book in this library? I was like, no, I have 12,000 books in this library. There's no way. But if you want to know what books, because they're always asking for recommendations because they're wanting new books. They're wanting to discover new things. So I have a little station where the kids can write reviews to others. And so I can show them like, oh, well, I haven't read, or, I can say, well, I haven't read this one, but let's go over and see if it's on the board. They are still reading and they still love to read. They want to read books that both cover things that they are going through, but not every book has to have a message. Not every book has to be a 90s after school special. And that's one of the things too, especially being in Texas, we get a lot of I hate to even, such a downer to talk about like the censorship and the book banning. And that's always one of the things I actually had a school board member. I went to a school board meeting where they were approving, and in Texas, school boards have to now approve any new purchases that we are adding to the school library. So while it is important that we do have books that kids that are having challenging times can see themselves in, not every book has to tackle something that is systemic or large. Books can just be fun. And, and even if you do have something that is covered, that is going to let a child see themselves and not feel alone, remember that they are kids and they want to have fun too, that there's fun in it as well. That's kind of my biggest thing. Is a lot of the times I'll read some of these books that are, kind of the issue books. And I'm just like, I would be hesitant to even recommend this to a child because, even when we have struggles, we still have joy. There's struggle, but there's also strength in it. So just remembering to also include some of the joy that they can also cling on to.
Rachel, you're so knowledgeable. That was wonderful. We really appreciate you being here and for sharing all of your insight with our storytellers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thanks for listening to the Storyteller Shelf podcast. If today's episode helped you, please subscribe and share it with a friend. In the link below, you can explore our educational library and learn about what's coming up next, including our live summits and the BB Notable Book Awards. We also publish a limited number of curated blog features for authors and publishers who want to spotlight a book we believe will truly serve young readers. And for companies and organizations that support kidlit creators, we offer ways to partner through sponsored episodes and select opportunities that are a strong fit for our audience. Until next time, keep writing your story.